Silver has been money longer than almost anything else in human history. Empires were built on it. Trade routes existed because of it. Entire economies once ran on silver coins. And yet today, central banks around the world don't hold it. Not a little, not quietly. They ignore it almost completely. No silver reserves. No silver strategy. No silver discussions in their boardrooms. Gold? Gold is everywhere in central banking. 36,000 tons worth over $2 trillion sitting in vaults worldwide. Silver? Nowhere. This isn't an accident. And it isn't because silver stopped mattering. It's because the system changed in ways most people don't understand. And if you're holding silver right now, or thinking about buying it, what I'm about to explain will completely change how you see it. If you're new here, I break down how financial systems actually work, no hype, no predictions, just the mechanisms behind the curtain. Consider subscribing. Let's get into it. To understand why silver is ignored, you first have to understand what central banks are designed to do. Central banks don't exist to trade. They don't exist to speculate. They don't exist to make profits on commodities. Their job is much simpler and much more powerful. They manage currency credibility, liquidity during crises, and confidence in the financial system. Above all else, central banks care about stability, not growth. Not fairness. Stability. Gold fits this role almost perfectly. It is dense in value. 12 kilograms holds $1 million. It's easy to store, easy to audit, rarely consumed, almost impossible to destroy. Over 90% of all gold ever mined still exists somewhere in a vault or as jewelry. Silver does not behave this way. And that's the first problem. But there's something deeper happening here that nobody talks about. Silver isn't just different from gold in physical properties, it's different in function. And that difference is why central banks made a choice decades ago that they'll never reverse. Silver isn't just a monetary metal. It's an industrial one. Silver is used in electronics, solar panels, medical equipment, chemical processes, industrial manufacturing. And here's the critical part. Once silver is used, it often does not come back. It's scattered across billions of devices. Lost. Uneconomical to recycle from most applications. Gold, by contrast, almost always returns to vaults. Jewelry gets melted down. Coins get stored. Gold bars change hands but rarely disappear. For a central bank, this creates a fundamental problem. You cannot base monetary confidence on a metal that is consumed, volatile, and tied to industrial cycles that have nothing to do with monetary policy. Central banks don't want a metal that behaves like an input to production. They want a metal that behaves like an anchor for the system. Here rests a number that puts this in perspective. About 60% of annual silver demand comes from industrial uses. For gold, industrial demand is under 10%. That difference means silver's price is driven by factors central banks cannot control and do not care about. Whether solar panel manufacturers need more silver this quarter has zero relevance to monetary policy, but it moves silver prices significantly. That makes silver unsuitable as a reserve asset. And this leads directly to the next problem. Silver is historically volatile. Not emotionally volatile, structurally volatile. Its price moves are often larger than gold's, faster than gold's, more sensitive to economic cycles. This isn't manipulation, it's design. Silver sits between two worlds, commodity markets and monetary history. That makes it unstable by nature. And instability is unacceptable for a reserve asset. Central banks cannot afford to explain wild price swings to governments, international partners, or their own populations. They cannot justify reserves that move dramatically because factories changed their purchasing patterns. Gold moves slowly, predictably, conservatively. When gold rises, it signals monetary concerns, inflation fears, currency devaluation, geopolitical instability. Central banks understand these signals. They work within them. Silver rises when industrial demand spikes, when manufacturers stockpile, when speculators pile in believing there's a shortage. Those are not monetary signals. Those are commodity signals. So silver fails the first test of central banking, predictable stability. But even if silver were stable, there's another reason central banks would never hold it. And this one is about power, not economics. Quick pause if you're restarting to see that what you have been told about silver doesn't match how the system actually works. Hit that subscribe button. I expose how financial systems operate every week beyond the narratives and hype. You need to understand this. Alright, let's continue. Central bank reserves are not just financial tools. They are signals. When a country holds gold, it signals sovereignty, monetary independence, long-term credibility. Gold communicates power without words. A central bank with large gold reserves is telling the world, we can settle international debts, we have backing beyond our currency, we are serious players. Silver does not carry the same message. Why? Because silver is abundant relative to gold. 1 part gold exists for every 8 parts silver above ground. Silver requires much more storage space for equivalent value 500 kilograms versus 12 kilograms for $1 million. Silver is associated with commerce, not control. Historically, silver was used for everyday transactions while gold was held by treasuries and monarchs. That distinction persists in the psychology of central banking. A vault full of gold bars says, we can settle accounts on the world stage. A vault full of silver says, we trade things. And modern monetary systems are not built on trade of physical goods. They are built on credit. Gold complements credit systems. It provides psychological backing, a reserve of last resort, a tangible anchor when everything else is intangible. Silver competes with credit systems because it implies physicality, real-world constraints, limitations. Fiat systems are designed to be limitless, expandable through monetary policy, adjustable through interest rates, flexible in crises. Silver represents limits, physical limits. That makes it philosophically incompatible with modern central banking. Under modern fiat systems, money is no longer tied to metal. It is tied to debt, trust, and institutions. Central banks manage money by adjusting interest rates, liquidity, and credit availability. They expand balance sheets. They buy government bonds. They create reserves electronically with keystrokes. Silver plays no role in this process. You cannot print silver. You cannot expand it on a balance sheet. You cannot use it to backstop banks instantly when liquidity freezes. Gold still works as a psychological reserve even in fiat systems. Why? Because gold carries historical weight. It reassures markets that there is something tangible behind the curtain, even if currencies aren't directly backed by it anymore. But silver? Silver is unnecessary in a fiat system. Not because it's useless, but because it doesn't fit the design. And here, that's what most people miss. Central banks proved they do not need silver by abandoning it 60 years ago. The United States demonetized silver in 1964, stopped minting silver coins, sold off government stockpiles, and nothing catastrophic happened. The dollar didn't collapse. International trade continued. The monetary system adapted and moved on. That experiment taught central banks a crucial lesson. Silver is optional. And once something is proven optional in a crisis-driven system, it never comes back. This is important. Silver wasn't rejected because it failed. It was sidelined because it didn't evolve with the system. As economies became more complex, more leveraged, more credit-based, silver became inconvenient. Too physical, too volatile, too tied to real-world production that central banks can't control. Gold survived because it adapted to symbolism. It stopped being everyday money and became a reserve, a store of value, a signal. It let go of transactional use and embraced its role as an anchor. Silver stayed practical. It remained useful in the real economy, manufacturing, technology, medicine. And practicality is not rewarded in modern monetary design. Modern money is abstract. It exists as numbers in databases, ledgers on screens, promises backed by institutions. Silver is concrete. You can hold it, weigh it, use it to build something physical. That concreteness, which silver enthusiasts see as strength, is exactly why central banks moved away from it. The system doesn't want constraints, it wants flexibility. Silver represents constraint. And so silver was quietly removed from monetary discussions. Not banned. Not suppressed. Just ignored. Left to industry and speculation, while gold remained in the vaults as a nod to history and psychological comfort. Today, silver exists in a strange position. It is too useful to disappear, too unstable to be a reserve, too physical for modern finance, too important for industry to ignore. Central banks don't hate silver. They simply don't need it. Their systems function without it. Their credibility doesn't depend on it. Their crisis responses don't involve it. Silver now belongs to industry, technology, manufacturing, physical reality. Gold belongs to balance sheets, psychology, trust, power, different roles, different systems. If you're holding silver as an investment, you need to understand this distinction. You're not holding a monetary asset that central banks will suddenly rediscover. You're holding a commodity with industrial demand and speculative interest. That doesn't make it worthless. Solar panels need silver. Electronics need silver. Medical devices need silver. As long as technology advances, silver has value. But that value is tied to consumption and production, not to monetary policy or central bank reserves. The people telling you silver will become money again when fiat collapses are selling you a story that contradicts 60 years of central bank behavior. They abandoned silver, the system didn't collapse, and they never looked back. If fiat currencies fail, central banks will turn to gold, special drawing rights, digital currencies, anything but silver. Because silver never fit the system they built, and that system is designed to perpetuate itself, not return to old models. Central banks ignore silver not because it lacks value. They ignore it because it gets consumed, it fluctuates too much. It doesn't reinforce credit systems, it doesn't signal monetary dominance. Silver is real, tangible, tied to physical production. And that is precisely the problem. Modern money is not real. It's abstract, expandable, limitless in theory. And systems always favor what supports them, not what questions them. Silver questions the system by its very nature. Gold adapted to support it. That's why one sits in central bank vaults and the other doesn't. If this changed how you see silver in central banking, do two things. First, hit that like button. It pushes this to people who need to understand how the system actually works instead of believing narratives. Second, subscribe because I break down these mechanisms every week without hype or agendas. Drop a comment. Does the economic explanation make sense? Or do you still think this is manipulation? I want to hear actual counterarguments, not conspiracy theories. Let's have a real discussion. And if you want to understand more about how central banks actually operate, watch my video on why every country is in debt and who they owe. Or check out my breakdown of the Federal Reserve and what it actually does. The more you understand the machinery, the better decisions you make. Silver isn't coming back to central bank vaults. That ship sailed decades ago. Now you know why. And knowing why the system works the way it does is the only way to navigate it successfully. See you in the next one.